To save multiple games, all we really need to do is give our games unique names and then save off the list of unique names that we have for our game so that we can recreate a UI and allow our players to pick which one they want to load. So let's start by going into our game manager script, and when we create a new game, let's give it a new name. Right here you'll see in the game data, we create a new game data object, and here let's assign a name to it right afterwards. So on line 83, we'll add a new line. We'll say game data, let's see if I can spell that right, data dot game name equals, and here I want to use a timestamp. I'm going to use the current time formatted neatly so that it just shows the date and then the minute and the hour and the seconds. So to do that, we can say date time, date time dot now, which is a C# method, dot toString. And then this allows us to pass in some formatting. If you just do that, you're going to get a kind of long string, but we can pass in some formatting and choose which type we want. So there's the general long date. There's a general short one that kind of cuts out the seconds. There's a full long date that shows like all of the text. I'm going to go with the general long date format though, because I think that that probably works well for what I want and it's going to look good in my UI. So I'm going to add a semicolon there, just put that capital G there so it knows how to format. And then we need to generate our game name property. So I'm going to hit Alt-Enter and let's hit Generate Field. I don't want it to be a property. We'll hit F12 and then we'll go change this to be public instead of internal. So now our game data has a game name on it. Let's go back to the game manager, and when we save our game, let's save it based on the current game data's name instead of the game one that I've got here. So instead of saving into game one, we're going to replace this with our underscore game data dot game name. Now we can't just load underscore game data dot game name because this object doesn't exist when we're trying to load. So we're creating it from this. So we need to find some other place to save off all of these game names. And in the save game method seems like a pretty good spot to do it. So we'll create a list of all of the game names that we have. Let's do that up at the top actually. Let's create a new list. I'm going to make this a public list, so I think I'll put it right after my public static instance. Public list of string, and I'm going to call this all game names. And then we'll initialize it to a new list of strings. Okay, we've got our all game names. Let's go down into the save game, and here let's add our game name to this list of all games. So say all game names dot add, and we'll add our game data dot game name. Now we don't want to add that name if it already is in the list though, because we could end up adding it multiple times. So we're going to add another line here right above it. I added a couple spaces just to clean things up, and we'll say if all game names dot contains, and then we do an open parentheses, and we'll put in our game data dot game name is equal to false. And then we'll run this line of code. That way, if we resave our level multiple times, we don't end up with that game name in the list multiple times. So we've got our all game names here. We need to now save that off into our player prefs. So I'll add another line here. Actually, let's just duplicate line 54 with Control D. I'll put in all game names for the key here, this first value with a quotation mark. So this would be all game names. And then we'll paste in our all game names. But if I just do this, it's going to give me an error because setString takes a string, not a list of strings. So now we need to combine all of these names into one big string or one big piece of text. And we'll do that with some comma separation. We could use whatever character we want, but commas are a really common way to separate things. So we'll use a comma separated list. I'm going to go down here and add two new lines, and I'm going to say string comma separated game names equals string.join, and this is going to join a bunch of strings and add in a delimiter. And if I hit tab, you'll see that it actually knows exactly what I want to do. Quotation marks around the string, or around the comma here, and then another comma outside the quotation marks, and all game names. This will give me a comma separated list of my names, and I'll put that in there for my player prefs. Save that off, and now every time I create a new game, it's going to add that name into my all game names list. Now I can't see that, so I want to add in one more log entry so that we can see it every time we maybe restart our game. Maybe right at the end of a wake, let's load in our all game names. So say all game names equals player prefs dot get string, and we'll put in our all game names. And if I just do it like this, we're going to get that same error. So remember what the error was and how that happened. Here's a quick challenge. See if you can figure out how to convert this string back into a list of strings. If you're not sure how to do it, do a quick Google search. Say, how do I separate a comma or convert a comma separated list of strings back into an actual list of strings or list object of strings in Unity or in C#. If you can't figure it out, don't worry. I'll show you in just 1 second. But I feel like that's a fun and interesting challenge for you to give a try. So go ahead and try it. And let's continue on and go through the answer. So we've got our strings here, and we can't assign it to all game names because that's the list. We want the comma we want to assign it to a temporary value that's the all game names instead, or all game names comma separated. So I'll say string comma separated list is equal to that, and then all game names will be equal to comma separated list dot split, and we'll split it on that quotation mark, and then we finally need a dot to list. What's going to happen is the split will return back an array of game names. So it'll give us back all of the game names in an array format, which is very much like a list, but doesn't support adding and removing things. So then we just call the dot to list on the array that it gave us, and it converts it to a list and assigns it to all game names. I can save that off, and the last thing I want to do actually is just log out our comma separated list. So let's say debug.log, and we'll log out that comma separated list with a semicolon right here so we can see all of our game names. We can't log out a list of strings, but we can log out that nice separated one. So let's go back into Unity, press play, and I'm going to make a couple new games. I want to get a couple new games in there so I've got a little bit of data. And then we'll take a look at what that data looks like and then figure out how we can add our buttons to do the loading. So we've got our console here. I hit new game, and I've got a new game created. Let's hit play. Stop playing and play again. And this log entry should no longer be blank. The first one right here was blank because I had no game saved. So there's my first game, 2/17/2023, and you can see the timestamp. And if I hit new game again, stop playing, play again. You'll see that, oh, what did I didn't stop playing. Let's stop playing and play again. And I should get another one. That's a couple seconds later. See the one 15 seconds later. And every new game that I do is going to create a new entry into there. So I'm going to have one new game created. It'll save off my actual game data into the game object, and it's going to save off into the game list. Let's go take a quick look at that registry one more time so you can just see what that data looked like. Got my registry editor here. And here you can see I've got my all game names. If I double click on it, I can see the text there. It's, again, gets that weird format, but you can see I've got my first one, then my second one starts after that comma, and the third one starts there. And the game names are actually right here as well. So you can see the games are saved off just as a timestamp for their key, and that's where I can see I can open up any one of these and see the data for that game. So my games are saving, the data is saving. My final step now is to build a UI so that I can pick which game I want to load. Before I do that load, let's go into Plastic and commit that we are now saving all game name, spot game, right? Game names list to player prefs. And we'll check that in. Oh, popped up an error. Let's do it one more time. It was refreshing that asset. Hit check in again, and there it goes. You see it updated right after there. We're good though, so we'll continue on.